Welcome everybody to episode number 2 of our webinar series, AI in the K-12 Classroom. I'm Jeff Kilner, Instructional Technology Specialist for the Indian River School District, and today we're going to learn about how generative AI systems like ChatGPT work, and then some pitfalls and promises in how those systems work. All of this is in service of our development of guidelines and guardrails for how to use generative AI in the K-12 environment. Joining me today is Dr. Helen Crompton. She is the Executive Director of the Research Institute for Digital Innovation and Learning at Old Dominion University Global, a professor of instructional technology and director of the VR lab at Old Dominion University. Dr. Crompton, welcome and take it away.
Title there, just as you've been announced, generative AI, potential and pitfalls to guidelines and guardrails. So it's thinking about what we're doing with generative AI at the moment to make it successful for our learners. So here's a quick overview. So as described, we're going to actually be going as quickly as possible because we don't have a long time today. We're going to be looking at artificial intelligence, looking at large language models very quickly, then going into limitations and misuses of generative AI, and then how to change those into guidelines and guardrails. So AI is not new. Since the 1950s, artificial intelligence has been there, been doing all sorts of different things, solving complex problems, decision-making, performing high-level computations, increasing accuracy. It's been doing many, many things. However, the progression has kind of jumped at different times. Early on, it was kind of slow. And one of the main reasons for that was people were not ready for it. There wasn't a lot of funding for people doing things because people were kind of a little bit scared, being very honest. So we didn't move very fast. But artificial intelligence has been in a great many things, especially for the last 20 years in particular. Google search that we've been using for a long while has had RankBrain and BERT, making our searches more precise and accurate. We've had it in ordering food, helping with Netflix, choosing movies, doing all sorts of things. There's many different types of artificial intelligence. You can see a list here, and you probably recognize many, from machine learning that involves training algorithms to make predictions or decisions based on data, deep learning using neural networks, all sorts of things there. And you'll see at the bottom, though, generative AI. Now, the other ones are using data. What's different about generative AI? It's the ability to create new output rather than solely existing on just the data that they have. New things are generated. We have text, video, images, audio, doing all sorts of things. Now, pay attention to those lists above, again, because they're not all independent. Generative AI actually uses a good few of those, especially the first 4 in particular. Now, ChatGPT appeared November 2022, and it's caused great change over the last year, over a year now. Again, generative AI ChatGPT is part of a generative AI. ChatGPT develops text. Now again, generative AI isn't just new. It didn't just appear November 2022. It was there a good while before. Anyone that was into the dancing people, where you could capture images of yourself and then suddenly look like you can dance, do ballroom dancing, do all these things that you couldn't actually do, and then changing styles onto images. It's been there a good while before. But ChatGPT was something different. Let me explain a little bit how it's appeared on the scene. So you can see the image there that I developed, and you can see in the very top left, Google. Google actually had the technology behind what developed into ChatGPT. They weren't doing much with it, and OpenAI, the company, said, oh, that looks really interesting. Can we have it? Surprisingly, Google said yes. Yes, you can have that. So they had this idea, OpenAI, of what to do with this technology, with this knowledge. And they went to Microsoft and said, will you partner? And they were excited that they gave them $1 billion to develop ChatGPT. Now, we are at that point there where they've used that 1 billion. And just to make a note here, it's caused chaos. Good chaos, bad chaos, it depends on how you want to see it, but it's changed a great deal. Microsoft have now given them 10 to 13 billion, depending on where you're looking and reporting. So there's a lot more money gone into it. So this is just the start. We're going to see a lot more going on. So ChatGPT, the developed, is a chatbot. I want to remind people about this because you're probably very familiar about the basic chatbots that we always saw on websites asking us to do certain things, saying, oh, you're looking for a watch, can I help you? And we would respond to that. And it'd have what's like a ring fence of ability, so it could only do so much. ChatGPT is very different. It's much more advanced. That's what's caused this big stir. Now, what it does is it answers questions. So you're probably thinking, well, Google, the home of ubiquitous answers, we've had this for ages. So what's the difference? Well, with Google search actually came out, 1998, around that time. And for over 20 years now, it's not changed greatly. It does the same type of search. We do have rank, brain, and BERT that helps you kind of find the search and home it in more directly to what you're looking for. But it produces a list of websites for you to go and find the answer. And the changes in the last few years are actually the advertisements at the top, and 58% of Google's revenue come from the advertisements. That's why you are seeing so many advertisements. So let's have a look what ChatGPT does differently. And it has a very clean interface. I'm not going to go into the full details. You can see a bit on the left there of my past searches, but they have the box that Google has in the middle. They have it at the bottom, and we can ask questions such as, what are Newton's laws of motion? And rather than give us those websites, it tells us directly. I know many of you have probably explored these and found what it does, but there are so many out there, there's probably viewers watching now that don't realize these capabilities, that it gives you the answer. Now, this screenshot just shows just the top part of the screen. If I control down, you can see that it carries on giving you a very full, rigorous answer. You can see my next prompt there. I've said, tell me more about point 3. I didn't say the third law or anything. I'll just say point 3, and it will answer that. So it's like having a conversation with somebody in real time, that they will respond, and you don't have to, like you would with Google, you don't have to explain what you said before and then add a little bit extra. You can just go back and forth, very conversational. Now, I'm covering here what is the GPT. This is important in placing it on the rest of AI and understanding how we're using it in education. So this is where we start to think about why we need guardrails and what's important. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Generative, like we've covered before, it generates something, it produces something, text, audio, images, video. The pre-trained means we gave it information. It's been given a lot of data to then be able to answer and respond to those questions. Transformer actually is more computer science language. That's just basically explaining the architecture of the AI. That's the bit that's had everyone excited at the moment in finding Transformer, that's suddenly developing all these new AI tools that we can use. So let's have a look at that pre-trained. Pre-trained for ChatGPT, they gave it Bing search engine data, Bing, the search engine of Microsoft. So they gathered all that data, threw it all into ChatGPT. They added a few other things like Wikipedia and bits like that. They were kind of secretive on some of those, but lots of information went in. Humans were then assigned to look at responses it gave and said, oh, that's good, or that's not too good. So then it developed to ChatGPT, and you can see the arrow there that we carry on. Now, think about that again for your guardrails of what information is coming out, and we're going to be getting to that in a short while. But so all that information from the internet has gone in to ChatGPT. Do want to mention at this time as well that we're talking ChatGPT, but this is pretty much identical to all the other models, the generative AI. They are using LLMs, large language models. So they're all doing the same kind of thing. So you can see on the left there, large data input. So that is all the internet from the information from the internet, anything else put in. Then machine learning, it finds patterns, it looks to see what's going on and says, oh, that's a lesson plan, that's a lesson plan, that's a lesson plan. Oh, let me look at those patterns across. Let's see, these lesson plans are from experts in this field. These are other lesson plans, and it looks at everything and it remembers everything. Then we responds to prompts like we ask it. But as we're responding to prompts, and as we even put in basic prompts in, it's learning from everything. So everything you put in to these large language models goes into the system. So again, all the time be thinking about guardrails that you might have to have. What are you putting in? Because you can't separate it out after. It's like students coming into class and you tell it all this information, then you might say, oh, forget that bit or remove that bit from your brain. It's not really possible. And it's not really possible with large language models. It inputs the information and it assimilates and connects to all the other things that it knows. So that's what it's talking about with large language models that these generative AI use. Now, this slide was actually generated by Bing Image Generator. I put in the prompt of wanting excitement. ChatGPT has made me extremely excited. The potential for education is huge. There's a lot of disruption going to happen, but I am very excited. However, for this session, we are going to focus, very importantly, on misuses and limitations. That isn't going to be the whole of it. I'm going to show you some of the things it can do, but how we can get these misuses and limitations, focus on these guardrails, and also think about how we can turn some of these misuses and limitations to be a positive in how we can use them. So you can see here 6 major areas. And I'm going to cover these again for the interest of time fairly quickly. There's a lot more into each of these, but I'm going to highlight the main points. So first one, cheating, the obvious one. We can't rely on checkers for this. So a student can go in and say, explain nuclear fusion in simple terms, and it will tell you. So the plagiarism and human checkers to tell whether who's written it don't work. There's many false positives that are coming up saying, yeah, that must be AI, and it's not. And that can be very impactful on students that we're accusing of using ChatGPT or these other programs, and they're not. So we have to be very careful. Simple things can be done as well to get around any checkers, such as a student could say, ChatGPT, write this paper for me. And then the student can just add spelling mistakes. When it goes through a checker, the AI says, oh, the spelling mistakes, that must be human. So there's many ways of getting around, even asking it to write a paper like a fifth grader. It can do all those things. So we've got to try and avoid those where possible and think about changing some of our assignments. And again, in a short while, I'll be able to show you some examples of what you can do. Inaccuracies and hallucinations, it can get things wrong. There's a funny example here where ChatGPT was asked, what is the world record for crossing the English Channel? And it gets it very wrong, obviously, because to walk on water isn't quite possible yet. But George Rife apparently did it in 2016. But the rest of the information about the English Channel is accurate, so it's hard. ChatGPT has, and all these have, jagged frontiers, meaning if you think about easy things and then hard things over here, it's not that, oh, it can do these easy things but not the hard, or vice versa. It's got a line of, oh, it can do these really hard things but these really easy things, but then so you can't say some simple things it gets wrong while very tough things it gets right. So in your guidelines, ChatGPT, all these programs, what they're generating should always be checked. Teachers are experts, and they should always look carefully about the content that you're given. Harmful use. This has been got around a little bit, but you can see here that someone tried to cheat ChatGPT into getting the answer and having it say how to make a Molotov cocktail. Obviously, I've cut it off there. I don't want to be putting that over YouTube. But you could actually find out these answers on Google. But ChatGPT, these type programs try to be more careful and aware and try to stop these things happening. But they have actually changed the algorithm. This is what I wanted to say here as well, that once they find things that are going wrong, they can tweak to stop those things happening. So if it was the end of the world now and you needed to make a Molotov cocktail, tough luck, because it's not going to tell you. Plagiarism, it's always been here. Students are doing it all the time. This is a little bit harder now for the fact that it's harder to track students, because what we could do before was we could get a portion of checks and check it against search engines to see whether it's somewhere else, do a reverse image check. We could do all these things, but now the output of ChatGPT is, again, like I said at the beginning, it's generating new text. From what it knows, it's generating new text. So searches are harder. It's also harder for the fact that it's pulling off the internet and it's gathering a lot of information from the internet without appropriate attribution. So we've seen a lot in the news, even recently, about New York Times and things suing ChatGPT because it's using their content but not saying, oh, it's from here. Now, again, with this, if you look at the Bing version, it actually points out some places, but it's still not fully accurate to where it's getting everything from. bias. Remember earlier on that timeline, it's getting things from the internet. The internet has all that content from humans. We are completely biased to all sorts of things. So all the bias that went on the internet is now in these programs. They tweaked things so that they were less biased, but again, humans tweaked it, so that might be adding more bias in. Like on that timeline where we had the human labelers, again, when they decided whether an answer was good or not, that was connected to their bias. Let's think, though, about all these things we've had so far, about how we can turn some of these around. Think about bias, having students check for that bias, having those inaccuracies found by students. Let's have a look at some examples here. And data privacy, sorry, the last one, data privacy, thinking again that anything we put in stays in that large language model, stays in the generative AI. So we've got to be very careful, and as educators and students, in thinking carefully about what goes in. There was major conversations about this at the start, thinking about having ChatGPT actually look at students' work. Say they did a paragraph of text, that could go into ChatGPT and say, critique this. And that was really, really helpful in thinking as an extra peer reviewer. When you get in your grade levels, I was the 5th grade kind of grade level manager at the time, and we'd all come together over some work and say, okay, what grade would you give this? This was like an extra one. However, we have to think again about, we've given that content that the student created, we've given it into a model that's just gone in. That's students' information that's gone in without their permission. So things like that we can't do anymore. Now we are a little bit more wiser to what we can use it for. So data privacy, we've also got to remind our students that while this is listening carefully to us, being very, very responsive, we need to be careful what information we're giving it. And there actually isn't a person on the other side. As I say, AI is all brain and no heart. So it mimics understanding and listening and empathy, but it doesn't actually have it. I wanted to put this slide in here as the positive note and thinking about how we can use it now. So it can be used for a great many things: content creation, personalization, engagement, tutoring, 24/7 support, assessment tool, and task automation. So it can do all these things. Assessment tool there is it can generate assessments for us. It's a wonderful tool for doing that, especially if you have to keep changing it very often, because it can just produce another one. You can check it over as an expert and then go ahead with it. So it can do all these things. So let's now flip some of what we've seen as the misconceptions or limitations and misuses to now beneficial use. Cheating, those educators that want to carry on putting the same assignments in and saying, well, they need to write a paper, they need to write paragraphs on this. They need to think very carefully who they're going to be grading, because it's probably ChatGPT that's going to be doing some of these. So we need to now, we've always talked about transformative learning. We need to think about how we can transform. Here's 3 examples of how you can use ChatGPT to do something we could never do before. So critique ChatGPT. First one there is we can look and we can have ChatGPT write a paper. Then students go in and pull apart, have it write a paragraph, and do we agree with that? Are there different ways that they could do that? Are there any different models that they could use? Is the thinking correct? Looking carefully. Debates are phenomenal for class and for assignments in having students. You have a topic. I often give my students a choice of different topics, so they get ownership of the assignment, and they debate back and forth with ChatGPT. Then there's the interview. I focus on whoever they're going to be interviewed. Like for mine, we have a lot of educators going into schools, so I say, okay, here's the prompt where you're going to have an interview by a school principal who's in a technology school, they're about to start using AI or whatever it is, and I have ChatGPT ask questions, and this is very interesting. Funny enough, I've had this often 3 choices with my students, and critique actually is a lesser preferred one. Debate and interview, students really enjoy that. And as you can see at the top, this is across ages, disciplines. It enhances critical thinking and active learning. However, I do want to point out that you have to, thinking about your guardrails, also think about additional strategies. So what can happen is students could have ChatGPT debating against itself. So we have to be clever in adding extra things, connect it to application-based tasks, think about things that you've done in class and have students connect into those things. On the list there, oral components as well, the actual face-to-face stuff. But multi-stage projects, I'm not going to go through everything now. You can perhaps take a quick snapshot. Collaboration and peer feedback though, but stay informed and be agile. That is a very important one. Now, as I finish on that one, I'm going to have one last slide. In thinking about your educators, you as an educator, or if you're an educational leader, educators have to do a great deal at the moment. They've had to go through COVID, managing being online, we're using all the technologies. And when we thought there was nothing worse, now ChatGPT and the generative AI have come out that are making us quickly transfer all our knowledge and make something the best as possible for our students. So this framework, the social ecological technology integration framework, has the educator in the middle, and it kind of shows they've got the beliefs and things there. But you can see the orange school system, the school, then the blue, the exosystem, the school system, and then the national. It's these kind of levels around the educator, providing things like tech support, training in how to do these things. And you can see policies, and then thinking even about cultural tech norms. It's basically that by giving educators the ability to use ChatGPT and these technologies that they're given, it needs so much more than the technology. It needs all these other things in place. The yellow meso system there actually just reminds us that, like policies in the school system, we also have to navigate the policies in the school systems and the policies nationally. So it's not just one thing is in one area, they're in multiple areas. The QR code actually takes you directly to more information about this framework, but do keep these things in mind. We've got TPAC, SAMA, and SETI. Here is another framework to think beyond content, technologies, pedagogies, that we need a whole system working together for technology to be effective. Okay, I'm going to stop there right on the half hour and pass back to Jeff. Thank you very much for listening.
Dr. Crompton, thank you so much for that presentation. The misuses and limitations, I was taking notes, and I plan on putting in the comments a resource guide that maybe includes some examples and further reading and listening around each of those misuses that people could then make a copy of. I also have a link to a Google form for feedback for our future webinars and things like that. So again, Dr. Crompton, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's been great talking here. And just to point out that all that information was actually from research. We gathered a lot of research out there on what was happening and pulled it in to find out those categories.
Awesome. Love it. Research-informed practice is what we need to get into that future that you described with those alternative assignments and powerful uses of AI in the K-12 classroom. So thank you so much again, and thank you to anyone who tuned in live or watches this after the fact. Take care.